I poured my life savings and even took out a $55,000 loan to give my only son the wedding of his dreams. But when his bride grabbed the microphone, humiliated me in front of everyone, and told me to leave, that night I made a decision. By morning, every single contract was canceled. My name is Laura, and for 28 years, my entire world has been my son, Ethan. I'm a see here in New York, and I can't even begin to count the number of double shifts I've pulled. After his dad passed away when Ethan was just a kid, it was always just the two of us. Every extra hour, every holiday I missed, it was all for him. I wanted to build a future for him that was brighter than mine. Every spare dollar went into his education and well-being, and I honestly did it with a happy heart. He was my reason for everything. So, when he sat me down, his eyes just beaming, and told me he'd proposed to his girlfriend, Sophie, I thought my heart was going to burst. I loved Sophie. She was ambitious and full of life, and she made my son so happy. But when they started talking about their dream wedding, I saw that flicker of worry in Ethan's eyes as the costs came up. They were dreaming of a huge wedding at a historic manor, a string quartet, 1,000 white roses, a fancy dinner for 150 people. It was a beautiful dream, but it was miles beyond what they could afford. So, without a second thought, I told them I'd take care of it, all of it. I had my life savings, a nest egg I'd spent 30 years building for my retirement. It was for that little cottage by the sea I always dreamed of. But what was my dream compared to making my son's most important day perfect? I emptied the account. When that still wasn't enough, I went to the bank and, with my hand shaking, I signed the papers for a 55-0 loan. I was honest with Ethan about what I was doing, not to make him feel guilty, but so he'd understand the depth of my love. This wasn't just cash. It was my future, my security, my everything. And I was giving it to him, no strings attached. The next few months were a joyful, chaotic blur of planning. I wasn't just the bank, I was the head planner. My days off were spent tasting cakes, looking at flowers, and visiting the venue with Sophie. My name, Laura, was on the bottom of every single contract I signed. The venue, the caterer, the photographer, all of it. I really thought Sophie and I were bonding. We were laughing over fabric swatches and seating charts. I felt like I was gaining a daughter and a friend. I was building their dream, piece by piece, with my own 2 hands, and my entire future. I never, ever imagined it could all crumble so spectacularly. As the wedding day got closer, things started to feel off. A subtle shift. My calls to Sophie would go to voicemail a little more often. My opinions, which she used to ask for, were now kind of brushed aside. I just told myself it was pre-wedding stress. I was the mother of the groom. My job was to pay the bills and show up smiling, right? I never got an itinerary, had no idea where I was sitting, and wasn't even mentioned in the program. Still, I didn't say a word. Mothers aren't supposed to keep score. The rehearsal dinner was when the ground just fell away from me. It was in this private, candlelit room at a fancy restaurant. Everyone was laughing. The mood was perfect. I'd even bought a new dress. When it was time for toasts, I stood up, my hands trembling a little, and spoke from the heart about the boy I raised and the man he'd become. With my voice cracking, I welcomed Sophie into our family. When I sat down, the room gave polite applause. Then, Sophie stood up. She clinked her glass, a weird, tight smile on her face. "I'd like to thank you all for being here," she started, her eyes scanning the room before they locked onto me. "And I'd also like to clear something up for Laura, since she seems confused about her role." The room went dead silent. I could feel every eye in the place turn to me. "This is our wedding," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "It's not a showcase for your maternal martyrdom. You've made everything about your sacrifice, and it's been a constant source of pressure. You've caused so much damage, and you are not welcome here." The words just hung there in the air, sharp and poisonous. I looked at Ethan, my son, my boy desperate for him to say something, to defend me, to make it stop. He just sat there, staring at his plate, His silence was a betrayal that cut deeper than any of her words. It was like looking at a stranger. Sophie wasn't done. She took a step closer. "I think it's best if you leave, Laura," she said, her voice low and firm. "We don't want your negativity ruining the actual wedding tomorrow, so get out." Humiliation washed over me in this hot, suffocating wave. I was being kicked out of an event I had paid for, in front of everyone. I could feel all their eyes on me as I slowly got up from my chair. My purse felt like it was filled with rocks. I walked out of that room, and each step felt like an eternity. The door clicked shut behind me, and the silence and the pain just stole my breath. I sat in my car in the parking lot, not even turning the engine on. The shock and the hot tears of humiliation slowly turned into something else. A cold, hard clarity. The woman I'd welcomed as a daughter had just disowned me in public. The son I'd given my life to just sat there and let it happen. They didn't see a mother. They saw a wallet, an open bank account for their fairy tale. Sitting there, humiliated, something inside me just snapped. The party was over. Their party, paid for with my life. The next morning, I didn't sit around crying. I got to work. I pulled out that thick folder with every contract I had signed. My first call was to the wedding planner. I let her know that as the sole person who signed her contract, I was terminating her services immediately. You could have heard a pin drop on the other end of the line. Next, I called the historic manor. "My name is Laura," I said, my voice steady. "I'm the client who signed for the Ethan and Sophie wedding. I am officially canceling the event." The manager started sputtering about non-refundable deposits and cancellation fees. "I'm well aware of the terms," I said coolly. "You can keep the deposit. The remaining balance will not be paid. Since the contract is in my name, I'm the only one on the hook, and I'm canceling." I knew this would cost me a fortune, but my dignity was worth more. One by one, I went down the list. I called the caterer and canceled 150 gourmet meals. I called the florist and canceled thousands of dollars in white roses. The string quartet, the photographer, the band. With every single call, I felt a piece of my power coming back. This wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. By midday, all hell broke loose. My phone started blowing up with frantic calls from Ethan and Sophie. At first, they were furious. Sophie was screaming that I was a monster trying to ruin her life. I didn't answer. Then, as the reality sunk in, the tone of their voicemails turned to desperate pleading. Their dream wedding was evaporating. Sophie went on social media, posting tearful videos about her toxic mother-in-law who destroyed her perfect day. But as the local gossip mill started churning, something interesting happened. A few of the vendors who had only ever dealt with me started commenting, confirming that a single mom had paid for everything and had been treated terribly. It didn't fix everything, but it certainly painted a different picture than the one Sophie was trying to sell. Their narrative of being the poor victims started to fall apart. "So, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Do you think I took it too far? Or was it justified? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you found this story compelling, please give it a like and subscribe for more." The wedding, of course, never happened. The shame was too public, and the financial hole was too deep. From what I've heard, their relationship, built on such a rotten foundation, crumbled under the pressure. It took a long, long time to climb out of that financial hole. The canceled contracts didn't cover everything, not even close, but recovering some of that money put a dent in the 55-0 loan. Eventually, I sold the family home in New York and finally bought that little place by the sea I'd always dreamed about. It's not a mansion, but it's mine. I might have lost a son that day, but I found myself again. I learned the hard way that love shouldn't mean you have to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. My worth isn't based on how much I can give, but on the respect I demand for myself. And as I sit here now, watching the tide roll in, I know that while I might be alone, I am finally, peacefully, and completely whole.